Welcome to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Markle. I am a curriculum development specialist here at NCBRT, and I work in collaboration with subject matter experts to create valuable and timely training for the responder community. The National Center for Biomedical Research and Training provides mobile training to both the national and international emergency response community. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking with Gregg Bird, John Dean, and Andrew Rateaver about fire mitigation in the wildland urban interface. So welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and start with discussing some of the key strategies or practices for mitigating the risk of WUI fires in vulnerable areas.
Ashley, I think it starts with awareness. If you are a resident or a stakeholder in a wildland urban interface or a WUI area, understanding the risk of wildfire is important to know. And there were several databases, U.S. Forest Service, firewise.org, some of these other Fire USA websites can help you map out where your risk of fire is, and understanding that and then acting on it, I think is a huge starting.
Yeah, and I'll key on that, Rat. I'll take that, and it's public education as well. It's making sure, here when with our Realtors Association, when they sell a house or they rent a house or they lease a house, we have a certain amount of information that we try and pre-populate into their welcome package, right? And that can be signing up for emergency alert notification systems. Now we're offering that out to our fire departments and police departments of a matter of introduction of services provided. And one of those is wildfire prevention and smoke detector services. And because we're realizing just because someone is choosing to move to our area, they may not understand exactly who their officials are that can help them be successful in becoming a part of our community.
Couple of thoughts. In our last session, we talked a little bit about insurance companies, how they were more recently declining to provide insurance. But what about utilizing them to provide information, just like the HOAs and the realtors, but also, hey, we're moving into this area. So the policies, here's some things. And again, it's more, like you said, Rad, it's more of awareness. It's not from a punitive standpoint. It's like, hey, you live in these wooded areas. Here are recommendations from multiple different agencies as far as how you can be better prepared. The things you can do to, whether it's, we talked about before, vegetation, clearing areas. What about building materials if you're going to remodel your home or put a new roof on, different things? Here are the suggestions that would better safeguard your home, or I don't want to say fireproof, but more of a fire resistant materials, and the things that are in some of the different FEMA brochures that you can grab as far as roofing material, putting in screens in different places, just those types of things to try to slow down the fire or to reduce.
Yeah, John, you're exactly right. There's a lot, Ashley, that a homeowner can do, and there's a lot that local governments can do to support the homeowner in hardening their home. And John mentioned it in terms of, you can just whether they be vents on the house or having a standoff of a rock curtilage around the resident where embers don't or can't collect, but vegetation management. And it's perhaps the job of the homeowner or the homeowners association, right, John, to cut back on the management. But boy, wouldn't it be great if local government had funding? We'll provide the dumpster, we'll do the haul away. It's not quite the thing, right, Greg? So you cut down all the vegetation that's overgrown and then you leave it in your backyard. It's still there, and it's worse because it's dry, right? So we need to actually cut the vegetation and then remove it off the property. And so that whole government, that whole approach to having even the local government provide the dumpster or the haul away service or the chipping service, all matters in terms of fire mitigation.
I think we were talking before about the fire service as far as going out and looking at different properties and reminding homeowners. But I think it's a total community involvement, and it's all levels of whether it's the police officer that notices something, the firefighter, the building inspector, right, a city worker or town worker. When early recognition, it can be the guy that's out there, on a complaint for a dog issue or whatever it is, of funneling that back into local government. And it's not from a punitive standpoint. It's like you said in the very beginning, it's an awareness piece as far as, hey, I was at this property today and I noticed this, right? And so what we don't know is a homeowner able to do it? Are they physically able to do it? Is this a couple that are, let's say they're more elderly and they're not able to do that? So, how do we assist them? And I think that it's a total community approach, and it's interesting some of the stuff that after the event, how the community comes together and they help one another. But that really needs to be on the front end where the community comes together and they help one another in the preparedness piece, as far as having the awareness, seeing what's there, and then acting before something does happen, and taking some of that fuel away.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, John. That's a great idea. Why, we come together post incident, but why not beforehand? And a couple things that popped in my head as we're sitting here having this conversation of, we have a really robust smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector program, right? Most fire departments have a way to receive these free of charge and install them, or help and assist residents install them. What about simply having metal containers that we can provide for proper ash disposal? And with that, the education of, hey, don't just come out with your fireplace ashes and dump them out off your wooden deck or that sort of thing. And it sounds kind of silly or minutia, but if we cover the bases of the things that we know and the threats and the hazards that cause, in RAS terms, these WUI fires, the Wildland Urban Interface Fire Incident, then, we're getting really good at working on preventing house fires. And John, you said it too, the building materials. So if we can take this holistic and whole community approach and start on the front end, we might actually be able to make a difference in the communities.
I think it's difficult. Let's say, hey, I buy a home and it was bought, it was built 50 years ago. It's probably not going to have the building materials and the things that are needed for a higher level of protection, right? But now as a homeowner, now it's an investment. Now it's an investment as far as doing that. Most people won't do those things until it's needed, or replace a roof or whatever it may be. So I think that those are the challenges. We talked in the last session a little bit about staffing. So as you were talking about how we do some stuff here, we have a lot of drownings in the city of Phoenix, so we'll do a water awareness, and we flood people in certain areas, especially those areas that have higher drowning numbers. We do the same thing as far as with smoke detectors. I think it's a little bit more difficult in the more rural areas, simply because your staffing levels may be less, and I think the homes are just farther apart. Just covering that, covering, from traveling from place to place to kind of get that awareness. So I think what would be one of the things to do is to have it where the community would have different meetings and then be able to provide this information. But it's getting people to come to those meetings. What's in it for me? And I don't want to say that in a bad way, but it's, how do we get those folks that are content? They're happy where they are, but how do we get that information to them? And I think it's not a one-prong approach. I think it's a multi-prong approach.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. With a large portion of the United States still having volunteer fire departments, and some of them are doing a great job, but I also know some of them are struggling. My brother's department in Pennsylvania, they're struggling for members. And they're doing things and hearing things and thinking outside the box of when they're having their fundraisers, their carnivals, their festivals, their chicken dinners, that they're trying to put some of this public education material and these prevention materials. They're trying to put them in their bags or offer them while they're coming, to do something and donate and be at the festival. So I really think it's going to be a collaboration of making more of an effort to get out there and do some public education, but also think outside the box of new methods of how we can leverage, cuts and resources and folks and funding, but also think outside the box for new methods to get the education and information out.
John, you mentioned it with the insurance. If you join, or if your particular homeowners association or street is becomes a Firewise USA block, if you will, the benefits are not only the organization and the preparation, but if you can claim that, then everybody gets potentially the insurance benefit. And that's going to be a better, perhaps a better reduction of rates, or at least showing insurance companies, hey, we're making the effort here. So I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware that they actually that you're able to do that. It's just like, if you sprinkler your home, right, you have an insurance reduction. So I wasn't aware, living in a metro area, that they actually have that, from a Firewise or Fire Safe, as far as some of the benefits for insurance.
Yeah, I don't know that it's an actual mandate, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I think it's the National Fire Protection Agencies has the Firewise USA program. That's one of the potential benefits for organizing like that.
Yeah, Greg, you were talking about the small agencies that may have like a pancake breakfast or something to draw the community in. But I think that, in not living in a more rural area, but I would hope that in most of those areas where they have different types of community events, we used to, not so much here anymore, on 4th of July, have fireworks and things of that nature, because obviously with the drought and the dry vegetation, a lot of those have gone away. But it almost has to be a continuous messaging, but you don't want it to be such a continuous messaging that it just gets blocked out after a period of time, right? So how do you balance that? And it may be, early on after the winter months of just a reminder. It can be, like you said, those community events. And then I think it's people, when they recognize that there's an issue someplace, of making notifications, again, not a punitive way, but an awareness way, and then having a solution. I'll give you a great example, and this is kind of a little different from Wildland. When I lived back in New York, we had huge snowfall, almost 5-6 feet of the windows on the side, and all our hydrants got buried, and we had a fire. So went to city management and said, hey, what can we do? And he's like, we just don't have the people. And so we took it upon ourselves to hire private contractors and strategically looked at different areas and went out and took care of that, as well as some different people, because some of it may be elderly people that couldn't go out and clear those hydrants, which is part of the ordinance. You may have to do something like that in some of these communities where the community's identified, and if it's not being done, that they're able to step in and assist. And obviously, you don't want to take the responsibility away from the homeowner, but not doing something is worse than actually taking care of that responsibility at that immediate time, and then working out on the backside. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
that's a great example. We did the same thing here, and now with the advent of social media the last couple of years, our city fire department, they ask and they put a challenge out to the community members when it snows of, hey, we'll adopt a hydrant and post your picture here, and the neighborhood that's taking the best care of their hydrant, keeping it clear of snow. We'll give you a challenge coin, or we'll give you a patch, or you can have your picture taken on a fire truck. Or they're thinking outside the box. So why can't we adopt that to Wildland? Hey, it's getting to be spring, it's Wildland interface, and hey, what are some things here that we can list to help get your property ready? So send us a picture of you cleaning your dead vegetation away from your house and forming that X amount of foot buffer, and people like that sort of thing. And again, it's thinking outside the box. It's getting community involvement. Not only that, but it's taking your local officials, your fire service officials, and you're building relationships with the community. I think that's just stuff like that. That's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the use of social media, obviously, for most people out there, regardless of age, they're somewhere in line. There's some social media. So I'm the guy who doesn't have social media, but I live through my wife, so she has social media. So she would be the one that would be sharing with me, like, hey, this is coming up, or hey, have we done this yet? So I think even if you're a non-social media guy or person, that there are ways to get that information through.
Yeah, yeah. In Rad's case, we could post a poster at the post office or at the campground entrance, and yeah, but multiple ways. There's a lot of value into taking heavy, serious, overwhelming topics and kind of making them fun. Because if we can bring back, then kids are getting involved, and if we can do those sorts of fun activities and make it a community event, that just strengthens our bond with our community.
Kind of going along with a lot of the things that we've been talking about for this episode, what are some of the challenges in enforcing regulations and policies in WUI areas?
I think a lot of it has to do with compliance. You can have the inspectors come by and point something out, trim the vegetation, remove this, whatever. But if the homeowner doesn't act on that, it doesn't really meet that next step. We need to not only have the enforcement, but also the property owner compliance, and that's a huge challenge. Guys, what do you think?
What about the areas that don't simply have enough inspectors, or ones that know proper clearing techniques or defensible space requirements? And so, maybe it's part of that, it's such a rural area that the officials are lacking there.
So I play devil's advocate here a little bit. So I agree with both of you guys, right? It's compliance, it's the knowledge, it's resources, not having enough resources. But I think it's looking at, are they able to, right? Do they know where the resources are? So I think, is it something where they come out and you point that out and they're like, hey, I'm not going to do that. There was that resistance. Greg, you talked about it a little bit before, right? There was a resistance. I would hope that most of the people in the communities would recognize that this is for them, and at the end of the day, people are out of compliance with these, where they have growth and they have the potential that affects everybody. So, that's why I'm thinking, going back to that community approach, where you do the stuff on the front end, neighbors help neighbors. And if you don't have the ability, like I said, if you see how a couple that they didn't have the means, or they just, how do we help them from a community standpoint? Is it people coming over? Is it affordable? Right? So it may come down to finances. So it's something where the town or the city could have resources, folks that would come out and actually be able to assist with that. And would there be a program maybe where there's, in these certain circumstances, and you had to meet certain criteria, where some of the townships could assist with that? So it doesn't fall. Let's just say you have someone that's fixed income. And the cost of something is going to be $1,000. I'm just making up a number now. That may not be feasible for some folks, right? They may not be able to. But now this city has a contract, or town has a contract with some folks that will come in there and do it at a lesser cost. And there's some emergency funding set aside. I was looking at something. So again, going through one of the after action reports, I think it was on the incident in Maui. And I'm just using that, for instance. On the back side of that, it was $6 billion loss, right? $6 billion. So if you think about utilizing funding up front and minimizing the loss on the backside, I mean, it would make sense. But it goes back to, how do we do that? How do we make that happen at local government? It's easy for us to talk about it, but when you're looking at the backside, where you're saying, and you could bring up any of the campfire, you just go look at the total loss on these fires, and you think about what would be some of the costs if that was deferred to the front end, would it reduce the back end, the total loss of homes and businesses, infrastructure? So just kind of thoughts.
Ashley, so let's be honest. What are we talking about here? We are talking about defensible space. We're talking about an area cleared around your house where the fire embers or the fire will either stop or not gather at your property. It's called defensible space. We're not talking about blight. Trim your yard so it looks nice like your neighbor's. The fact of the matter is, if a fire is rolling and it's approaching a neighborhood, if a fire catches on one house that doesn't have defensible space, and the fire is approaching a house next door that does have defensible space, fire agency, John, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they're going to try to protect the house that already has that buffer on it, that already has that defensible space. So really talking about firefighting, it's not about blight or making your house look pretty. It's about assisting firefighters in saving your home.
Yeah, I mean, and Rat, you bring up a great point here, right? And it is defensible space. It really starts in, and we said it earlier in this session was that it starts at that homeowner, that awareness piece. But I think from a firefighting standpoint, again, we talked about a lot of these homes are more rural, they're more remote, and sometimes it's, where's your nearest fire station? Is it 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away? And then the response to that, right? Even if it's, whether it's volunteer, whether it's career, depending upon location, time is something that was always going to be a factor on this. If it's something that's early on and the fire department can arrive early on and they can save that home, they will. But if not, it's about writing off what's lost and then actually and defending what you can defend. And I think that's the reality of it. So I think when we're looking at the response piece, those are going to be challenges.
Well, and let me add one other challenge here that may not be orthodox, but what about apathy? What about either the renter, the tourist, the person that property isn't theirs? And so there's apathy with how they're either prepared for it, it won't happen here mentality, or that they don't care how they're disposing of the materials because they're only there for a short time. I think that plays a part in this mix as well. And that's a challenge.
Well, think about the Airbnbs and the VRBOs, right? The renters. So you may have folks that are coming into these areas and they don't really recognize the hazards, the potential. They're coming up for a weekend is what they're doing, or for a week, and they're getting out of the heat, and so now I'm up here, and they really aren't as diligent as some of the other homeowners in the area, and they don't have that recognition piece. So, education from the person that's renting the property, that may be another piece. Here's a checklist, here's a checklist of things to do and not to do. So it's like I said before, it's not one prong attack. It's so many different layers.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that information is available on some of these open source websites for community fire safety. Gregg, so have you heard about it? We've got the homeowner. It's the red flag day, real hot. They're advertising it on the news. And so the homeowner goes, we need to clear our brush. So they go out on the hottest day of the year so far and start to clear brush and then start the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, here a lot of times on red flag days or even non-red flag days, you have to have a permit to burn. Yeah. And our Department of Natural Resources, who's enforcing that, they will issue a burn ban. And that is publicized high, far, and wide, everywhere you can imagine. And inevitably, we get called out to a fire, and the homeowner or the property owner goes, "Oh, I didn't know." So that happens all the time.
And Ashley, for our listening audience, red flag is a high fire danger day when critical moisture RH levels go critically low, and the fire spread might happen a lot quicker than it might when the fuel moisture is higher. So we have critical fire weather, a fire weather watch, red flag warning.
Gotcha.
Fire weather warning as well. National Weather Services start putting out too.
Watch warning. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So to wrap up this episode, What advice do you have for community education and outreach programs who are looking to improve, awareness of mitigation strategies in their communities?
I'll take this one first. I think it's multifaceted. I think it's whole community. I think it's thinking outside the box. I think as many methods as we can combine with the homeowner, the jurisdiction, the inspection piece, and with the fire department. Make it fun, make it educational, do it early, do it often. But there's also a balance there, so not to oversaturate so that people stop or start ignoring it.
Mhm.
John, what do you got?
No, I agree. I think, we said it before. It has to, and it's something that has to be continuous, right? There's that balance, like Greg was saying, we mentioned. You can't start the process just before the season starts. It's an ongoing, and I think it's just that the PSA announcements, a nice balance. Hey, fire season is 4 months away, and we're coming up on it, and maybe some predictions of what the weather is going to look like in the next few months, or it's going to be drier than normal, or it's going to be wet. Just a continuous information being shared with the community.
And actually, I'll top that off by saying that's not just the enforcement or the surveillance. Hey, you're not doing this. You've got to do this. I'm going to say on the other side, it's community provide the service. So have the trimmings or the vegetation haul away. Have chipping services as part of that. If you cut your vegetation down, we'll come up, we'll collect it, we'll chip it, and get rid of it for you. That as well as understanding risk. So making available, just like if you're right, Greg, if you're looking at floodplains or avalanche zones, where's the wildfire going to burn? What risk are you? And understanding risk, I think, goes a long way to being in compliance as well.
And one of the things I would think, Rad, is risk will change, right? In certain areas will change based upon time of the year. There's certain areas that are getting rain or moisture. There's other ones that may not be. So I think that's important too. As the risks change, that gets communicated to the community as well.
Yes, absolutely. That fire interval. How often does a fire burn through this area? Sometimes it happens, every 10 years, and other times maybe because it hasn't happened so often, that's even a more risk.
Thank you. So that's about all we have for today. Next time, we'll wrap up this series with a discussion of fire preparedness in the wildland urban interface. Thank you guys so much for joining us this time, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley.
If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, please send us an email at podcast@ncbrt.lsu.edu. Make sure you subscribe to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.